Mr. Jim Carter, welcome to the podcast, my friend.
Ashish, glad to be here, my man.
It's so good to see you. I'm really excited for this podcast. People are going to get so much value from you. You're doing so many things. First, before we get into it and your background and all the things you're working on, I really want to pay homage to our friend Kyle Debius because he introduced us. We were at a men's mastermind event, sometime in October of last year? It's probably been,
sounds about right.
Yeah, it's been October. And we were introduced to each other there, and you were a complete stranger, and we just connected really quickly. And actually, we were on the same plane coming back, and we got to sit next to each other. It was a Southwest flight, so we got to pick where we sat, and we sat next to each other, and we had a good 2-hour conversation all the way back home, and got to connect. And I'm really excited that you're here and willing to share. So, welcome.
Most definitely, man. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's been a really amazing journey to be able to watch you. You have been, I want to get a little bit technical today about some things from your experience in the marketing world and your marketing expertise, which is where you really focus. But I first want to just start with all the things that you're working on, because you've been taking some really big leaps, some big jumps. I know some things that you're working on that are scary, and it can definitely be challenges when you take these big projects on. So give us a little bit of background about what you're working on, what you're up to, and how you got here.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I have spent the majority of my professional life just fascinated by technology. And it's always inspired me to see what people do with technology to provide a positive social impact. And that may sound just like inherently noble, but to me, it's just something that has been this like spark and this desire, inside of me. I'm an Eagle Scout, so I grew up in service. I spent my entire childhood life going through the phases. It was service to God and country. It was finding local community projects. It wasn't always just helping old ladies across the street and tying knots, although we did that. But it gave me the opportunity to really think kind of outside of myself and to kind of step into what kind of a man I wanted to be as I grew up. And my dad was the biggest advocate for the Boy Scouts of America, that program. Unfortunately, I lost him to cancer about 12 years ago. But now in retrospect, realizing that I had all of those years with him to go on these campouts and do all these things, it's sort of like this beautiful story of I almost lost my dad when I was a baby from cancer. He survived it miraculously, and he kind of got life's golden ticket. And I didn't realize that until it was a little bit later on. So his time with me was sort of emblematic of now how I love to show up and spend time with my girls. Yet, had I not had that time or the desire to spend more time, I really don't think I would have picked up those same principles. And that's really what guided me to say, okay, now I'm turning into a man. I'm in my early teenage years and figuring out what I want to do. And I need to decide, what do I want to do? What do I want to get into? And for me, I was just fascinated by technology at a very early age. My parents got one of those really old computers from Sears. At the time, it was brand new. But, printing out banners and playing, games on, 8-pixel or 8-bit, pixel monitors and stuff like that. It was a lot of fun. It was fascinating to me. And I just decided that I was curious enough that I wanted to pursue it. And as I started to grow up, I just found this love for coding. I picked up some books. My dad wanted to learn with me. It ended up not being his thing. I would read them, pick them up. I ended up teaching him how to code. And I just took on this life path of software engineering. And I'm handy around the house, if you will, and I know how to use my hands and work on stuff.
That makes one of us.
Yeah, well, partially. Don't let me finish here. I'm gonna overthink the hell out of doing electrical work and everything to make sure I don't fry my hand off. But still certain working with my hands, mechanical things, I like it, but I don't love it. But what I'm just passionate about is building and trying new things and exploring and just seeing what's possible. And I found that love through software. I realized I didn't have to tangibly put everything together, but the fact that I could think about something, I could code it, I could create it, I could launch it to the world. And on the internet, it can go anywhere in the world. It was just this realization that I had that I could do so much more. So that's a little bit of the story about like the why and where I came from. And what I did with that, I'm really proud of. I've spent my professional life trying things, being an entrepreneur, working for different studios, agencies, things like that, advising. And now I consider myself a recovering software engineer because I spent 2 decades of my life building other people's and some of my own dreams and putting all that together. And now I'm a bit more of a technology generalist. I love being on the cutting edge of it. And I absolutely am so passionate about finding ways to take tech and apply it either into your everyday life or where we're going as a society, and continue to spread that message to make a bigger impact. And I love working with entrepreneurs of all stages. I work with people who are just launching their ideas, and I've advised all the way up to Fortune 13, 14, 15 brands. Most recently worked with Verizon Media to launch an augmented reality platform a couple years ago. So the scale is wide because I love it. And I love trying stuff and serving that way. And it's a really exciting space because every day there's something new.
And it's always changing.
That, it can never get stale. And that's what I love about this industry, is just when you think it's starting to get a little bland, man, you turn on the TV, you flip the switch, you check out another news article, and you're reinvigorated by a new potential or something else that's possible for our generation.
Yeah, what are some of the most important trends that entrepreneurs should be paying attention to when it comes to technology or marketing or software? What comes to mind, and I've been reading a lot about this recently, is, this whole fight about maybe I'm speaking really relevantly to the times right now about, 4-hour or 4-day work weeks, trying to get people to work from home, trying to keep team and communication high. So I'm hearing a lot about like productivity tools and the software that's improving, productivity tools that are existing out there. And then also, I don't know if I'm getting too lost in the weeds here, but the other thing is, and I wanted to really scratch this with you, is like marketing messaging and like sharing your identity digitally with customers in a more scalable way, because you can't get on planes as easy. Well, I shouldn't say you can't get on planes, but perhaps customers don't want to see you. People's offices are not open, right? And so how do you keep impressions high without, the traditional sense of marketing and selling? So I don't know, what is kind of coming up for you? Like, what are some of the new things that are out there that people should be paying attention to?
Yeah, it's a great question, brother. And, one of the first things you're talking about like, is it productivity and, like feeling how technology is changing in our culture. I saw this really funny meme, at least it was to me the other day, that was, it was like 100 years ago, people crossed the country, with oxen, and in wagons. And today I have an alarm to remind me to drink water. It's
or
like,
breathe,
or stand up.
Stand up.
We should be standing, yes. And it's funny, but it's not, and it's realistic, but it's also just hilarious. Like it's weird how we put this label on everything. And, you get someone like Rob Diedrich, who is just a human optimized machine. And I mean, the man is fascinating, but it's also not a life path that everybody needs to lead, I should say. For me, I love systems and operations and getting things in order. Like my brain thrives on data.
Sure.
But there's also something to be said about, I'm kind of tired right now. I'm going to get my sunglasses, get an iced tea, and I'm going to go sit in the backyard and just sit in the sun for 5 minutes. And I don't have to make sense of it. And I battle with that all the time because I thrive with systems also. But there's always something special about breaking the system. And I think that's why that's our drive to like see what's next. And going back to my story, that's my inspiration for wanting to try new things. And, I like to look around the corner before somebody else and just kind of plant my flag and say like, yeah, I not that I saw that coming, but that I was part of the movement of where that was going. So I'm fascinated by all the new products, the new startups that come out all the time, not just because it's based off of tech, but because you have passionate founders and entrepreneurs that see a problem and they're trying to fix it. And whether that problem is fabricated or in their head or it only exists for them and their mom, I'm not going to say that I have launched startups because my mom told me that it was a good idea. It would be real, but that is what it is.
That's what it is.
The fact that so many of us are so excited to see what's possible, and we live in such a connected world where it is possible, I think is sort of the beautiful way that comes together.
But you also, yeah, and hearing you speak too, like you are really good at interrupting patterns. You have this emotional intelligence about yourself. You do this in yourself, and I'm sure you do this with others that you lead in the masterminds or within your staff. Where does that come from? I mean, you're very aware, and you're kind of in it, right? You're in the data, and you love it, but also you're able to like step away and see sort of this canvas of life in front of you rather than getting lost in the painting. I don't know if I'm using a wrong analogy or a bad analogy, but like you have this.
I'm a big analogy.
Yeah, you have
I
this
love
like.
them all. Bring it. Yeah.
Yeah, you have this like art.
We'll unpack it. Yeah.
Yeah, and you do it in a incredibly light. And you've done this with me even. You ask intelligent questions. You poke and prod in a very graceful and compassionate way.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that, man. And I'm proud of that skill. When I try to make a little bit of sense of it, I catch myself sort of going back to really what one of my superpowers is, which is I am an engineer. I am a technical person by design. Like that's just the way my brain works. But I love also just being able to have non-technical conversations, and I'm able to talk with adults that don't have to identify as being technical, right? You know how it is. You're in a room, you say, raise your hand if you're a tech person. Maybe you get 10%. If you're lucky, everybody else identifies as non-technical. Yet, hold up your smartphone.
That's right.
And it's like, I'm going to hold up this device, right? And look at the amount of things you're able to do with this little device in your pocket. You're able to coordinate a business. You're able to balance work on your balance sheet. You're able to pay bills. You're able to book podcasts. You can do all these things, and we don't give ourselves credit for being a technical person, even though we thrive under technology every single day. And it's those kind of guiding lights that I like to sort of bring to light, right? Like I like to expose that for people to really think about, because so many times we get stuck in what we do, and we may hire somebody to do the technical things for us. But if we stop and realize that, yeah, we actually do have that inside of us, we could figure it out. The question is, do we want to go that way? And for me, it's finding those opportunities, because I am that person, to present that light to people who say that they don't, and just get them to challenge and think about it a little bit differently. And that's one of those fundamental things that I love about technology, is there's so many ways that you can embody what's possible. The question is whether you want to do it.
One of the things that I want to ask you, and I've seen you do this with your marketing agency, is as you start to achieve scale, and this is something that I just recorded another podcast about this, because I think a lot of people that are scaling businesses that are, founder phase, 1 or 2 employees, started in the garage, and then they're kind of growing to 25, 30, 50 employees. Like, you get really lost in the details. You may not be good at delegating. You're a control freak. You're not good at building out that team. There's some, mapping out process management, things like that. There's certain things in the scalability phase that are actually quite challenging. And you've done a really amazing job in being able to find a team, delegate to a team, and not get, sort of victim to getting lost in that and micromanaging and being over controlling. And, where does that come from? Tell me what you've learned. What has been some of the challenges that you've experienced, or some of the traps per se? But, you're sort of at that building scale infrastructure now that I don't think you're done, and you're going to keep going before you hit maturity. But, you've been able to hit sort of this next level that a lot of people struggle with as a founder. So tell me a little bit about that experience that you've had and some of those challenges.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, I will never stand here and say that I've got it all figured out.
You figured it out.
Like, I am a human being like every single person listening.
For this season right now, and the next season there'll be other challenges that you got to solve, right?
That's it. It's the next level. It's any of those adages. It really is the truth. But as long as you stay in complacency, like you're comfortable, then you're never going to find those. And that was my thing, man. So when I mentioned I'm a recovering software engineer, I meant it because that's what I knew for so long. For 20 years plus, I would show up, I would be behind the keyboard, I would code, I would do cool things, and I was proud of it. But even though I was challenging myself with bigger projects and bigger scale and things like that, I needed something fundamentally different. So what I did was when I pivoted, I did a hard pivot, and I wanted to get into the service-based organization. So I wanted to come up with an agency model where I no longer could be the person coding. I wanted to be the leader. I wanted to show up in a way that other people would want to follow me. But I knew that I had to do that in such a different way than I was comfortable with, that it broke down a lot of those barriers. And it just got me open to asking more questions, asking for more help, joining different groups, joining masterminds, going on trips like the one I got to meet you on. And just the same way that I love to challenge people on the technical side, I like people challenging me how to be less technical. There's nothing wrong with, like, that's just being a human being, having a good conversation, learning about somebody else and where they've been. So for me, I am proudly the founder and the CEO of my company, Carter and Custer, but I make it very clear that I am an engineer type. Like, that is how my brain works. So it's not impossible, but it's harder for me to think 5-year plan, 10-year plan, really big, really, really meaty, like, kind of goals and ideas and stuff like that, because my engineer brain kicks in and I say, okay, great, but how are you going to do that? Like, 5 years time, how much can change, and I start to get stuck in those pieces. So these acts of continually trying stuff and taking risks, but still calling my shot high, has helped me to grow into that. And the only way that I know I'll get there, once those visions and the clarity and everything is established for my team, is trusting the team that I have and continually looking for awesome humans to bring in. And a friend of ours, Chris Harder, who is just grateful to call him a business partner and a good friend, he had instilled something in me, which was hire fast and fire faster. And we took it a step further and said promote fastest. So the idea that if you want to get where you're going, you've got to have all the tools that you need to get there. And if something isn't working, you have to be strong enough as a business owner to just let that go. But all the while, the things that are working, man, give it everything you've got to pour into it. And those 3 things in that order has been really helpful for me as the leader of our company, but also for me to highly delegate and just trust the team. Because I've never had an executive assistant until about 5 months ago. With everything I've done my entire life, because I was a doer, I was an engineer, I'm a builder. Like, I wanted to get in there, I wanted to do the stuff. But it dawned on me that even on my own calendar, somebody else, my EA helped to coordinate booking time with, here on the podcast and everything. And it's just those little things go so far, so that way I can show up and be my best self. And now with a team of I'm about 26, 27 employees and contractors with the company right now, and we're hiring and still growing. I'm really proud that this is my second 7-figure business that I've built. So now it's no longer a fluke. I know how to do this, which I'm really, really proud of.
That's right.
And now it's like, I don't want to let that go. I don't want to miss something. I don't want to not be able to see around that corner quick enough. So it's really trusting the team. It's trusting that the team has the best intentions because they align with what I wanted as the founder of the company. And also being humble and vulnerable enough and willing to change if something's not working, not just team, but also the direction we're going. We had a department that just wasn't really cutting it. We saw that we didn't have enough work coming in and it was costing us a lot. And my team presented to me a plan for how we just release that entire department, everything that we do with that type of work, not just the team that was there, but like the ability to even talk about it. Like, we removed it from our site. We no longer do this. Now we have strategic relationships with other companies that do it awesome. And the more that we could niche down, the better that it would give us the clarity to be able to do more. All of those things line up to just make for my days really, really gratifying now, because I get to wake up, trust my team, pour into them, nurture them, give them everything that I can, and try to build a really great working environment that we all love.
I love that. And you are very vulnerable. You lead from that place. And we're fellow girl dads, but you know, just in your
We are.
business, how has that served you?
You know, I've spent some time thinking about that, and vulnerability can easily be confused these days in 2020 and beyond. I feel like it's one thing to be vulnerable, and it's another thing to be vulnerable and open to change. You know, because too much vulnerability can almost sound like complaining, or it can just be like, I'm wide open, take your shot, you know, and not being able to do anything about it. But being vulnerable and then actually asking for help and being willing to do something about it is something totally different. And I've learned that the hard way and easy ways. One leads into another, of course, because once you see what you can realize by taking something in and applying it, it's massively helpful. I'll give you a quick example. About a year and a half ago, when the company was starting to hit profitability and really start to get some growth and some traction, I wasn't sleeping well. I was stressed. I knew what was coming, but I wasn't comfortable. Comfort's the wrong word. I wasn't confident that everything was lining up the way that I wanted it to be, not from a perfectionist standpoint, but from a I'm missing something standpoint. And when I had to sit down again with Chris, he was kind of looking at my business with me, and we were punching holes in it. In the first 20 or so minutes, he was like, Jim, your finances look good, but you just don't have a good enough grasp on your numbers. Why? And I didn't have an answer for that. Like, I thought I was doing okay. And he's like, you need a fractional CFO. Don't go hire one right now, but like, you need somebody who knows exactly how to model this stuff out, who can challenge you on it, who can show you how to put all these numbers together in a better way so you can sleep better. And I was like, really? It's like, yes. It's just you're at that stage in business where you're missing something. Now, the old me would have put up a front and been like, nah, you don't know what you're talking about. Like, I got this, like, you know, I'm moving. But I immediately took his advice. He connected me with a couple people that he knew that were great. I ended up hiring one, and I was vulnerable enough to sign up for their Business Money Basics class again. Here I am, multi-time, you know, founder, been in the business for all this time. Anybody could look at that and be like, what do you mean you're taking Business Money Basics? What have you been doing for the last 20 years? But for me, it wasn't just a refresher. It was sort of like a rebase. I realize I have such a different mindset about everything I'm doing now than what I did. I'm looking at the world through a different lens.
I love that.
So how dare I try to put an old lens on a new vision? And the minute that became clear to me, wow, there's a lot of clarity and vision kind of things happening here, but I like where this is going. Everything changed for me. And it was a small investment that paid dividends, man, because I was able to take advice from somebody that I trusted. I was vulnerable. I was showing everything I had. And he was able to help me because I was willing to show up transparently, but I did something about it. I didn't just say, that's cool advice, got it, okay.
Yeah,
let's
here's my numbers. I'm being
forget.
vulnerable for the sake of being vulnerable.
Right. It was, no, I'm doing this because I want the help. I need the help. I need the advice. I need to learn. I need to grow. And it's a different path. So why would you want to get direction from somebody to go down a path that hasn't been there before? Chris in this case had. So I was like, what am I missing? How can I orient myself to get where I'm going a little bit faster? I'm not looking for a shortcut. I'm just looking for the right path. And now I like refactored all the budget stuff that the CFO gave me. I come up with my own financial models. I challenge them when they give me challenges, and I've got more of a counterpart. And it's not because I am not a CPA, and I'm probably never going to be. I don't want to, but I can take full advantage of that advice, and I can make the best data-driven decisions because I'm honoring who I am. I am a data-driven human. You know, you can't optimize what you can't measure. And I realized I was trying to optimize things that I just had no really good gauge on. So when it comes to vulnerability, I feel like there's two lines of thinking. There's being vulnerable because you feel like you should, and it's the right thing to do. And then there's being vulnerable because you actually want to make a difference. And that takes a lot, but you'll find it's easier the more that you exercise it. And the sooner you can get in the right circles and in the right communities and ask stronger questions, man, I just find that you get those answers a lot quicker, and they end up making a difference in your life that much faster.
Well, I think that part of it is to admit, and could be why it's difficult, is sometimes you have to admit that you're not right, or that you're wrong, or you don't know, or you're not the best. And I know Chris talks about this all the time, that it doesn't matter how smart, rich, handsome you think you are, there's always somebody who's smarter, richer, or more handsome than you. And yeah, I threw in the last part because you're a handsome dude, but still. But I think that it's this like level of humility that brings out that curiosity at the same time. And then you can ask questions and then get feedback. And then you have a really nice loop of being able to make change and take action.
That's it. And the more rooms you get in, the more you speak up, the more
That's
you're willing
right.
to be vulnerable like this. Even in this conversation right now, success to me would be that one thing that I say helps somebody else realize that maybe they're stuck in the same, the little rut that maybe I was in a year and a half ago or previous. Or maybe they have the answer for me and it's an evolved state of thinking that I haven't even been to yet. So just the fact that I'm opening up may encourage somebody to actually reach out to me and say, hey, Jim, have you thought about thinking about it like this? But if we never raise our hand, if we never actually speak up about it, how can we expect anything to change? It won't.
And you really do a good job of reaching out and putting yourself in different rooms, asking for mentors or joining masterminds. And I think that, I have been indirectly related to this mastermind ecosystem most of my life, and had this like level of curiosity that I wanted to keep learning, and how do I go and where do I go and all that. But you recently just acquired a mastermind company, so I'd love you to speak to because I think a lot of listeners don't even know what a mastermind is. And maybe they think that they need a mentor, they know how to find a mentor, but like a mastermind takes that whole concept to a whole nother level. So I'd love you to speak to your experience in being part of masterminds now, running a mastermind business. But I think there's a lot of power in this word and this ecosystem. So maybe talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, of course. It was the concept of a mastermind that fundamentally changed business for me.
Yeah.
I'll start with a little bit more context in my story. And about, I left my objectively successful startup that I founded, I would say 2018. I was living up in the Bay Area. It was a lot of fun. I had fun launching startups, raising funding, doing all those things. Like I was living the engineer's dream. It was Mecca if you're a software engineer and you live in the Bay Area, San Francisco, California. And as much as I was loving it, I knew I was destined for more. That's what I was talking about. I needed to leave behind this kind of old chapter and put on a new lens. And when I started over, I just created a new entity. I was like, I'm just going to consult. I'm going to try some stuff. I'm going to see what sticks. Fortunately, we were financially stable enough that I had enough runway to experiment. I had all the support of my wife. It was great. And it dawned on me that I was in the same situation that I was previously, which is, yes, I would probably end up launching something else. Yes, I would probably get into a new business, but I just didn't feel like I either had the support network or I had the ability, again, in that concept of vulnerability, to show up and say, like, this is what I know. What am I missing? And for me, I'm really happy with what I've built in my life. I really, really am. But to put sort of the monetization lens on that for a minute, I'm not a 9-figure wealth kind of individual. Like I've never just had a massively successful exit that was acquired for hundreds of millions. And you haven't seen me in TechCrunch or on the front page of a paper about my startup got acquired by something else. And I'm not saying that I need that, although it'd be lovely. I was always wondering, like, well, man, have I just been missing something? Is there something about doing business that I'm just like blind to, or am I too afraid to do it, or am I not willing to risk enough? And I think a lot of us kind of exist in that sphere of not living in a what if, but really thinking about like what's possible, and am I missing something that's possible? And it's honestly impossible to answer that question because it's so subjective and it's so, abstract. So when I had heard about this concept of joining a mastermind, I feel like a mastermind is just the best kept secret for the last 100 years.
Yes.
It's a collective of minds all helping each other to work on their businesses. And the old adage, you'll always receive, you give more than you can receive, but it always comes back to you. And I thought about that and it kind of matched my ethos and, so saw, what could happen from there. And again, common topic on the theme, Chris Harder, our joint friend, him, his wife, and his brother were all in business together. They launched a mastermind in early 2019 called the Fast Foundations Mastermind. And their whole idea here was to serve early stage growth entrepreneurs that were starting their businesses and to help them sort of cross that $500,000 a year mark, which for anybody here that's listening in business that's done that knows that that's a really big kind of delineation line. Like once you get past that point sustainably, it requires delegation, it requires high level thought, it requires vision, it requires processes, and that is more than any one human can do themselves over time. So I thought about that and I decided to pull the trigger and go for it. And it was that act of showing up, being vulnerable, raising my hands, sweaty pits and all, grabbing the mic, saying what I do, and keep showing up and keep asking questions and keep having conversations that helped kind of navigate where I am today. And I stayed in that program for almost 2 full years. I ended up being the longest running member of that program. And then everybody keeping track of time, we all survived a global pandemic. Congratulations, I'm part of that as well. But with that, it helped me get the skills that I needed and the network that would support me over the long haul. And it just so happened that after about 3 years of running it, the Harder family decided they were going to close it because they were moving on to work on their legacy projects in some bigger place, and that was totally fair. But RT Custer, my business partner, and I, who run Carter and Custer, we were both products of that mastermind. Not only did we meet in that mastermind, but we got to know each other. We got to realize that we each had really good skills, and we came together through meeting each other in that program. And that's actually how we've grown our agency together. We never would have met each other had it not been for that. So it was very close to
cool
home.
Story, yeah.
And we actually made an offer to the Harders. What would it be like if we bought this from you, flat out? And we wanted the story to be about how not only the members of it, but we also coached in the program because we'd excelled, we'd done the work, and we were supporting other entrepreneurs through it. We wanted it to be part of the story that the coaches saved the program, and we wanted to honor it, and we wanted to grow the program. So we did it in early 2022. We officially bought the Fast Foundations program from the Harders. We then continued it. So we have an open running cohort right now. We're recording this in June. And we had our first event. It was awesome. Our second event's coming up in August, and we're going to continue the program. We're going to continue growing it, and it just lights my soul on fire, man. It's
awesome.
It's so fun, not just to do it because anybody can create a mastermind, create a group, create a program. If you haven't, I highly recommend it because the feeling of standing on stage in front of a group that you help curate, that are there for you, that want to learn from you, it's a feeling like no other. I'll never forget that first time I held the mic on stage in the program that I co-own. But it's sort of that ongoing, that continuity of it, and the fact that I can see the change happening in entrepreneurs, and they look to me for advice. They look to me to be vulnerable and have me help call out their blind spots. It's a really wonderful feeling, and I just feel so grateful to be in this position, to be able to call some things out that, again, not giving shortcuts, but helping people, point them in the right direction, to help them get where they want to go that much faster.
Well, one of the things that we have the luxury of having you on the podcast today too is that you see so many different entrepreneurs, what they're doing, what they're working on, what are their challenges. What are some of the most common themes that you see that entrepreneurs struggle with, or perhaps make them fail? And
there's a couple of themes.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a couple themes that are coming up, and I'm going to answer this from both being part of the program as well as now leading the program, because
Sure.
I feel like it would be irresponsible to answer it on just one way or the other. So, common themes that I've seen between those two is mindset and really feeling like the entrepreneur has everything that they need within them to be able to do what they want, and probably finally hiring. I would think it would be those three big topics. So to kind of unpack each one, on the mindset side, when I joined the program, I was sitting in the back of the room. I was closed up. I may have raised my hand to ask a question or something, but I was very fearful of judgment of what people were going to think of me when I asked it. I had a lot of self-work to do, and I'm really proud that I put the time in and I did the work over the last few years. But now I'll be the first person to grab the mic and get up there and try to rally people, inspire people. I'm not that much of an extrovert. I am still more of an introvert, but I believe so much in the power of when you show up, you can impact lives, that I'm the first to raise my hand. And what dawned on me is that the people that were willing to do the mindset work to truly understand and kind of lead into that second one, which is, you may be a brilliant mind, but if you don't believe it, why the hell is anybody else going to believe it?
I love that.
There's one person in particular that I'll use, and of course I won't name names and everything. I'll just use this individual as an example. They are a beautiful artist, like the most colorful, the most organic, the most joyful bringing art you can imagine. And this person serves a lot of children through their work with education and supporting teachers and things like that. And this person just doesn't fully believe yet that they have everything that they need to thrive. But when somebody like me sees this person's work and how they show up and all these things, I'm like, where have you been all of my child's life? Like, I would have hired you just to they have a coloring book, they have all these things that are engaging for kids. I'm like, I wish my daughters would have had more of this, if you will. But that person just doesn't believe that they have it in them. And seeing that person go through a program like a Mastermind, and again, I'm going to be as open-ended as possible to not, get clear here. But seeing that person go through and having other people just be in the room to reflect back to them what the genius that person sees in that other is strong.
It's super important.
Ashish, you could tell me all day that, I'm the handsome one on the call, and I'll believe you. But it's only when I hear so many other people just like, you need to pay attention to this. Like, this is important. Like, get out of your own way. And
I don't think that's I don't think that's like self-validation. I think it's just like creating this level of intense awareness about something that perhaps you're ignoring. It's not like, oh, well, I need to be validated that I'm, this or that. There's a difference.
Yeah, because it's not about ego. It's about accepting that you should be proud of what you've accomplished and that you still have yet to accomplish. So, am I the best SEO tech person in the world? No, I'm not trying to be, but I know a lot of stuff, and if I can help somebody with it, I'm grateful to help them with it. But unless I fully believe that I've got everything that I need in me to do it, I'm stuck. And that's why, like, mindset 1, that being maybe 2, and 3, it's trusting to build a team. So, Ashish, you know what it's like when you build a team. It's you get stuck in that. Okay, 1, can I afford them? 2, can I trust them? 3, no one's ever going to do it as good as I can do. And all these things keep coming up. But while not everybody needs to have a massively large business, you still want to accomplish the goal that you're setting. So if you want to impact a lot of lives, how irresponsible do you need to be in your own mind if you are going to try to do it all yourself? There is only so much that you can do as a human being. And if you're going to put any time in and you're a family person, why not focus on your family? And you can do that, right? And I had to kind of ask myself those same questions, and now I see it at scale. The people that are doing the work, that are paying attention, that are taking action, messy action and figuring it out, they're the ones that are getting over their mindset blocks. They're the ones that believe that they've got it. Even a little coaching goes a long way. And they're the ones willing to hire and train and get their genius out of their head so they can make a bigger impact in the world. I feel like everything else kind of works itself out. You
Yeah.
can do webinars, you can do social media strategy, there's all this stuff, but man, you put those three together and you unleash somebody, it is amazing to see what people can come up with. And it's just the ride of a lifetime to watch all these entrepreneurs take our advice, do the work, and show up and then build their network.
Well, you lead from example, and it's really apparent in the way, I mean, I'm sure the listener can hear it in your voice and your styling and your ethos. I love that word. And, I think you need to honor yourself in that you show up that way so other people feel safe to do it too. And you lead by example. So just really, really just fun. Oh man, I miss talking to you.
I appreciate that we got time today. Yeah, and it's the truth. We have the most fun when RT and I are up there. Our kind of balancing act is we're both dads. And if anybody here follows me on social, you'll see that I have just as much of a mix of professional stuff with dad jokes and stuff like that as it gets. And, we'll be up on stage and, I'll maybe be all business and I'll get into one of these monologues and be talking very prolific and like inspire people. And then I'll say something and then RT will just grab the mic and say, and that's what she said. And we just we have fun with it. And I feel like that's what life's about is, can you make a big impact in the world? Can you implement the things that you love and teach, but also can you have a good time and make some money while you're at it? And we just have so much fun doing it.
So good.
And again, it goes back to that vulnerability thing. We are more relatable because we were in those seats just a couple years prior. It's one thing if you join a mastermind with like let's just pick on Tony Robbins. Well, the man has accomplished incredible feats in his life, but he's also been in the game for longer than most people who joined his programs have been alive.
Most people have been alive.
Yes, correct. So how daunting must it feel to sit there and learn from Tony when you're like, geez, you were saying these exact same things when I was in diapers, right? Like crossing that chasm is massive.
Massive.
But here's RT and I, we get up on stage and we share what we know. We talk about watch outs and stuff like that. And we're like, you guys, we were just sitting in that seat, literally that seat a couple years ago. And
it resonates.
It does, because it's doable. Like, what can't you accomplish in a couple years' time? Because we're living proof. Like, we were just willing to get humble, roll up our sleeves, do the work.
Yeah.
And if we can instill that in others to save them some time and effort, man, sign us up. And that's what I love seeing at scale now, which is really cool. And that's why I believe in these mastermind programs, man, is if your network is truly your net worth, then why aren't you building your network and why aren't you asking more questions? Right? The only way that I met you is because I was willing to join a group of guys that I didn't know what we were going to do. I just trusted the leader. I trusted our boy Kyle. And I think very similar to you. You're like, that sounds like some fun stuff that we're going to do. Let's go have a good time. You never know.
Just say yes. It should
be a yes.
I want to ask you a couple final questions here as we wrap up, but I'm really intrigued about your routine, daily routine. What is, or you can talk at routine or rhythm, or what is your process for the day to help you perform at the highest level?
Yeah, for sure. It's a great question, man. I will be the first to say that it is not consistent and it is not like glorious and should be on an Instagram quote card. But it works for me because it honors who I am as a person. We kind of talked about that. Like, you can have all the best hacks and stuff like that, but if you just need to sit down in the sun for 5 or 10 minutes and recharge, you do what you need to do.
Right.
So for me, it's variable based on the week because I am a father, I am married, I have a house, still got to take out trash, do stuff like that. But the average day for me is wake up in the morning about 5:30. The dog sleeps with us in the bed. We're luscious like that, so pet the dog.
Luscious like that. I love that.
You get that morning like puppy energy kind of thing to supercharge it. Wake up, have a glass of water while coffee brews, and pour a cup of coffee. I will typically, even though this isn't always recommended, I am the CEO of my company. I am the founder. I take a lot of responsibility for my company. So I typically will hop on Slack, because I'm on Pacific time and a large majority of my company is, well, mostly all remote.
All over.
But because so many people are East Coast and things like that, if there's an emergency, I feel this intrinsic need to just support. But I have a boundary with that, which is I don't spend much more than a few minutes just to make sure that like everything's okay or good enough until I start my day. And then I put my phone aside and I typically will grab a book and I read a little bit, whether it's 5 minutes or 25 minutes. I just try to fill my mind with something good to just kind of think about stuff. And being the engineer, the operator, I've kind of checked a box, which is I've appeased that side of my brain, which is like, okay, but is the company crashing?
Right.
Right. I've sort of like, it's like, okay, I'm good. I've checked that box and now I can kind of move on with the day. And by then, it's sort of like shower, wake up my girls, hear about their day, those kind of things, get everything together, and I walk my kids to school.
I like
I've
that.
done all year, which is great. It's going to change next year because my oldest is going into middle school. But for this year, they both happen to be in the same school. And I leave my phone in my pocket and I talk to them and I hear about their day. I hear about what's coming up. I try to think of myself in them. And there's some teachable moments.
I love that.
Some dad jokes. There's talking about gratitudes and stuff like that. And then I drop them off, I kiss them goodbye, and I get my morning kind of movement in, and that gets my body moving. And then the rest of the day, man, I am just on it. I have my calendar organized. I check in with my EA. She gatekeeps my calendar, just like, I picture like Gandalf with the staff. Like, she's just like, nope, this is what you're doing. She's amazing. She keeps me accountable. And I take lunch. I take frequent breaks. I drink a lot of coffee during the day. I love it. It's not
all good
to me. There's water in.
How about
there,
evening? How about evening routine?
Evening, right around about 4 o'clock every day. Again, Pacific time, about 4 o'clock local time. I start to finish things off. I do my best to get to the gym Monday through Friday. We have a YMCA around the corner, so I'll either walk to it or I'll hop in. I work out for about 35 minutes. Pick up the kids because the kids have been at after school care at YMCA. That'll change in summer, I know, but it is what it is.
It is what it is, yeah.
But it's a good excuse to get out there to feel good. Some of those days where I just feel dragged, I just really want to get moving.
Interesting.
And then head home, and I'm a parent for the rest of the night. It's very rare that I will open my laptop after, let's just say 5 or so o'clock in the afternoon. And I rarely ever will get on the weekends. And it's just because balance is a hard word. I do like what our boy Kyle talks about, which is a rhythm. So for me, the rhythm works. I wake up, I'm in one rhythm. I go through the day, I'm in another rhythm. And then I'm a dad again. And then the weekends, I try to just recharge so I can get right back into it.
I think that you've also
really works for me.
You've also got to a level of scale that you can do that, right? Like I think when you're starting, perhaps that it's much
really
harder
possible.
to find, huh?
Yeah. Totally. It's not really possible in there.
It's really hard.
It's okay to change it. In fact, I realize I miss journaling. Like I miss prepping my day with a pen. And I found some of my old journals in the garage this last weekend when we were cleaning up. So I think I'm actually going to augment my routine starting next week now, and I'm going to get back to that. So whether it's reading or doing a little bit of journal, like getting my mind right, it's okay to change, I guess, is the moral of that story.
Well,
exactly. Family and different requirements, you should be changing, you should be evolving with your family. And I'm good with that, but it serves me and it makes me feel like I am giving myself some time during the day. And it's not all business, because the life of all business to me is just not worth living.
Well, as you say that, let me ask you my final question. For you, what does it mean to live a rich life?
For me, to live a rich life, it is showing up unapologetic for the things that I love and giving more than I can receive, because I know in the end it always comes back, but it's so much more fun to give to others. And again, I know that sounds noble, and it's okay to me that it is, because I grew up with that ethos and I've seen the change that it's made, not just on others, but also on myself. In fact, if you're watching the video, you'll see behind me, I've got these pictures that's a school that my wife and I have built in Ghana through Pencils of Promise, which is one of the organizations in New York that we both support. And while I've helped raise almost $300,000 for this organization, not one of those dollars went because we were trying to fundraise to build a school. They gifted us this school in our name to honor our family, simply because we were just willing to help. We were willing to try something. And I'm not saying that because I need a badge of honor. I'm just saying it because I enjoy the process of trying and iterating and trying to find ways to add more wealth or more richness to others, that it always comes back. And it's part of that experience that makes life rich to me.
Well, Mr. Jim Carter, I really honor you. I really appreciate you sharing. I think it's so cool to call you a friend. I think you're doing such amazing things in your business and helping so many people. And I really do. I love the word ethos. I got to use the word ethos more in life.
It's a good word.
It's a good word, but you really do have a wonderful grounding ethos of value and giving value to the world, and just continue to support you. You're amazing, bro. Thanks so much for being on the podcast.
You're so welcome. Thanks for having me, and the great conversation as always. Appreciate you, man, and thank you equally for inspiring so many, inviting me on here. And again, I hope something that I said, it just helps to resonate with anybody else who's gone through similar situations, just knowing what's possible.
Absolutely, man. Well, keep giving, keep sharing, keep growing. And if you're out there, reach out to Jim. We'll put all his social media handles in the show notes, and he's doing some really amazing things. So make sure you follow him. Thanks so much, Jim.
Appreciate you, man. Thanks.
Bye.